Hi, my name is Sarah Gottlieb and you are listening to The Sound of Color. I'm a designer and I work with colors in spatial design, product design and branding. In this podcast, you will meet a series of influential guests in the field of design and architecture who will all share their personal stories and expert knowledge on and about colors. Together we will delve into the magic of color and its significance in the world of design.
There's actually a lot to study about colors. It's not completely subjective.
The Sound of Color is brought to you in collaboration with Montana Furniture. I'm very excited about my podcast sponsor because Montana Furniture is a part of creating more playful spaces by bringing colors and high-quality furniture into private homes, offices, universities, boardrooms, restaurants, lobbies, and concert halls. So, as you can hear, they are just as big color nerds as me. Hi, Emanuele and Alessandro.
Hello.
The guests in this episode is founding partner Emanuele Stamuli and architect Alessandro Bruzzone from the Acne Studio Stamuli.
When you're a teenager and you have to express your emotion to your first girlfriend, you just go with black and white. You don't really know how to express yourself.
Stamuli is an architect studio that designs high-end stores for international fashion brands as well as residential projects and hip furniture. They are a collective of creatives who share a rationalistic approach to design combined with a passion for detail, sustainability, textures, geometry, and, of course, color. They have worked with fashion labels such as Acne Studios, Alexander Wang, by Marlene Birger and Ganni. I went to visit them at their Stockholm studio and met them right in a frantic time in between leaving for an exhibition at Design Miami and a birthday bash at the studio. But it was a very lovely visit and I definitely felt very welcomed in the studio that felt a bit like a big, loud-speaking, busy and loving Italian family. In this episode we speak about color as light in architectural spaces, how to approach colors for a project where clients has quite strict brand manuals and very specific brand colors, and how to still work with them and create innovative spaces. We also chat about how you as an architect or designer really have to investigate a color by playing around with shape, material, light, texture and context. And last but not least, how to work with colors without actually adding any color to your design. But I want to know where their interest and passion for colors originally comes from.
Well, I guess that for us, since we often work with the geometries and forms which are quite clean, we love rationalism. Sometimes we question ourselves and we try to find the role of the decoration, which we think is an emotional level to the project that we always want to give. We're always very careful about the emotion of a space, the feng shui of a volume, however you want to define it, but we're very much into the whole emotional part of what we do. And the color, it's color doesn't really exist. It's like how light washes a given surface with a given texture and blah blah blah. It's very complicated. I'm not the right person to speak about it, but
Google it out there. Google how you perceive colors.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But I guess that was our way, right? We're not really in love with monochrome minimalism.
We see in color in the end, so it is an important part of what we look at. Yeah, and definitely some emotional inputs.
Yeah, I think also with some of the stuff that you say, when you say rational, you're into this very kind of feng shui form and like of a space. And I think to a lot of people, maybe when they are afraid of color, it's because it's not rational and it's so hard to control. What is your thoughts on that?
In the sense that we approach on our design and the layouts and spaces is often very rationalistic, so very straightforward and functional.
Very much.
And the colors in this place could also be a functional element or just an emotional one. So when you enter a space where you have some walls in different colors or objects in specific colors, you are able to put an accent that otherwise is very hard to reach. And I think it's the best way to play around with the lights in a space.
Yes. And I mean, it's a in the Tunnelbahn, in the metro station, like reference that we always like, where the emergency exits are cladded with a different colored tiles, where the vault in stone is in a. You see it. It pops out to you. So the color, there is a functionality to color too, to color contrast. And to add to what you say, that's also our interpretation of our taste. They say taste is quite subjective. Might not completely agree.
Oh, that's interesting.
And there are shades of right and wrong, even when you pick up the colors. There is a lot of education behind the colors. I mean, I am far away to know all the rules, but there's actually a lot to study about colors. It's not completely subjective. And a lot of the work we do, I feel, is also to explore that. It's like, when you cook, at a certain point, you can play around with spices and you kind of get that that's the right quantity.
Yeah.
And the coloring works a little bit like that. There is an edge of rosemary you're supposed to use. More than that, you're just gonna feel only the rosemary. So, this whole thing, because I understand that we're in a generation where we are overwhelmed by imaginary. Everybody's a Pinterest expert, right? Great. However,
or an influencer on Instagram.
Sure. However, the reality of fact is that the majority of the things that we think are stunning and beautiful, well, they're very, very well thought through. It's not a coincidence.
No.
Yeah.
And also probably the fact that we work a lot with retails and brands is also something that is important in the use of color and put it in a different perspective, probably.
Yeah.
In what way?
In the way that when clients are brands, they have a strong identity and a message to send out. So a specific color can send that message, while another one is a completely different take on the same word. So there are some rules, as Emanuele was saying, but you have to follow sometimes. And of course, playing around with it, with materials and shapes and shadows, it's a way to get like a feeling from a red that is that can be different from a red placed in a in the shadow or in the light. Can be two different colors, right? And in this sense, I think it's also very important the relationship, of course, because you can pick like a color and say, yes, I love this color, but this is something that you can't really say in the sense that it's always together with something else, with the context. And I think in this sense we are exploring so much with the work we do, and is always something to learn about how to use colors and how to use maybe the same color we use in a project, but take a completely different expression because of the material we put
reflections.
So that I think is one of the most
I think I agree with what you're saying. I think also a previous guest I had on the show, a Danish textile designer and color designer called Margrethe Odgaard. She talks a lot about colors as friends. If you're having a dinner party, you don't want to have all your friends that gets really drunk. But you also kind of want to have one of the friends that gets drunk and are too loud, because otherwise it's going to be too boring. But then you also need kind of the boring color to kind of even things out a little bit.
Very good point.
Quite like that description. It sounds like you are working on the same kind of level when you select colors.
Yeah. And we often get to work with people that kind of know about textures and colors.
Yeah.
Our clients are often very educative on creative theme and how to express themselves in an emotional way. Generally, if you are a chief designer of a collection, you kind of know how to speak through emotion or sensorial. So very often, and the reason why we have been able to deep dive into the usage of color is because sometimes the job that is appointed to us has one of the topic that we are asked to work on. It's all those how to utilize a color that, for instance, is important in that collection of that particular season. Some of our clients, they have some colors that are specifically something that needs to belong to the concept of their interiors. So that's also why for us the color has become important. We obviously like to work a lot with stainless stainless steel is a reflective material, and all of a sudden you can have one single color, washed or not washed by light, and the way it's reflected all around the store, it's 10, 15 different shades of it. And all of a sudden you haven't done really anything on the color, you just have worked on reflecting surfaces and how light hits them, and you get how do you call that thing that
Kaleidoscope.
Thank you. A kaleidoscope of items, and I think that's a lot of fun for us.
It's interesting to hear how Emanuele and Alessandro approaches the brief to use a specific color. Something that could be considered as a restraint from the client, as a way to play with that color, to investigate the color, to stretch it, to expand it, to transform it, and to find new ways for the color to be seen and interpreted. So I'm excited to hear which color they will choose for my musical experiment, The Sound of a Color. So the experiment involves that you choose a color and I get the musician to compose the sound of the color that you choose.
Very nice.
So, Emanuele and Alessandro, what color should we hear the sound of?
Should we pick the pink?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Which color are you picking?
The pink.
And now you're saying the pink. Let's talk about. I'm assuming I'm looking at something behind you. I'm assuming it's that pink, or is it?
It's even paler.
Yeah,
it's even paler.
I can take a sample actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pink is a very interesting color. I think
for us it has been important.
It has been a very important color together with the yellow actually.
Yeah, light yellow.
And why is that?
It's hard to say. It's a very emotional also connection, and but pink, especially as it's not a primary color, has a lot of interpretation. When you ask like somebody to pick a pink, and maybe you ask 5 different people, no one will take like the same exact pink. It's impossible.
This pink is quite masculine, and then the pink of the sample you're gonna take, it's the stereotype of the feminine pink.
Yeah.
Pink and yellow, they can be brutal, and it can be very, very gentle. Sweet and gentle, and also they fit very well with concrete and stainless steel, to not be underestimated. I mean, look at Berlin. You walk around in this ugly, not for me, building in concrete, and they have the handrail in light yellow, the handrail in little pink, or the framing. It's pitch of light color on concrete and steel. They work very well.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's like the juxtaposition between brutalism and like softness. Like
and the human touch.
Generally speaking, contrasts are always like a good way to emphasize a message. So even if you want to emphasize the brutalist, concrete thing, or the gentle aspect of a color, is always is the best, no? To place things that are in contrast together. And
is that like, I think that's quite a good point. Is that why color is important to you? That you are able to emphasize it? Like,
yeah, they get like strength together. I mean, like materials we pick together with the color we pick, but always like put together for a reason, and to emphasize each other sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes just to make something disappear instead, depending of course on what and where we place it. But yeah, this is also a very important part. But I wanted to show you the sample.
Get it.
Yeah.
Good. Oh. I like that you say masculine, that it's a masculine pink, because I call that pink vagina pink.
Yes, and that's why it's masculine.
Exactly. Okay, true.
No, but what I wanted to say, because you said, is it the contrast that you're looking for? Sometimes I also feel, very distant. Since we are Italian, I'm half Greek, and we work in Scandinavia. Sometimes I also feel that our role, it's to break a little bit this, in Sweden we would say, the Mäklare look of interior, where everything is coherent. That drives me crazy.
You kind of want to go in there and like
plain coherent,
spill something,
yeah, exactly.
like a big pot of paint in the middle.
Pour a bucket of something on the wall. Now it's good.
Yeah, get it.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, here we go. Here it is.
It's a bit luxe.
Oh, yeah. Can you just... Oh, it's a bit luxe. Yeah, I wanted you to describe the color for the
This is actually a material. It's not properly a color. But if you look at this, and it's just this. It's just a pink with some, red and blue. And it's actually the composition of the color. So it's very nice to play around and see what makes, this pink in the background. Because in the end, pink is always like with a bit of blue and red, of course. And whites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also, so if we go with the thought that colors affect us on all our senses, how does this color taste? This pink?
This taste...
what do you say?
I would say it tastes like warm. I mean, it's very inviting, like a hug, but also very...
This tastes
funny.
panna cotta with strawberry jam on top.
Ah, yeah, you mean
know?
like as a food, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Very
like
comforting,
a food,
sweet. I would, to me, it would taste like panna cotta.
Very cool, yes.
One of my favorite.
It's definitely.
Also, like the super creaminess of it.
Yeah.
With very...
And very, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. How would you say? No?
Yeah, I see it. Definitely, it's a sweet thing.
So today we are apparently going to hear what a sweet Italian dessert sounds like. A yummy pink. I wonder what the musician of this episode, Andy Wiseman, says about that. Hi, Andy.
Hey.
In this episode, I have invited the musician Andy Wiseman to join me and my sound experiment. Andy Wiseman is a Canadian multi-instrumentalist and producer, currently based in Copenhagen. He is known for his versatile musicianship. His own experimental music showcase immersive soundscapes, crafting a dynamic sound that fuses ambient, IDM, electro and pop elements. He has collaborated with a wide range of artists both on stage and in the studio across North America, Europe and China. It has been great to talk music with Andy, and I'm very happy that I got him to join in on the experiment to create the sound of a color. Thank you very much for wanting to be part of this musical experiment that I call the sound of a color.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.
Thank you. Well, in this episode, my guests are the founding partner Emanuele Stamuli and architect Alessandro Bruzzone from Stamuli. So when I asked them to pick a color that they wanted to hear the sound of, they picked, drumroll, pink, which was a bit surprising, but it's a color that they actually quite like to pair with more brutalist materials like concrete or stainless steel, because they really think it creates an interesting juxtaposition. So I'll just find a picture for you. I'm turning my computer. It's this pink.
Beautiful.
Beautiful pink.
I love it.
And it's actually kind of like a recycled plastic material, so it's like a tabletop material. Yeah, what kind of words would you put in this pink?
It's definitely got a candy quality to it. It looks juicy and tasty. I don't know, I love pink. It's very like safe and comforting. It's bright, but it's not like too intense. And I also really like the way it mixes with these kind of darker, more lifeless tones. It adds so much to it.
Yeah, you mean like for the rest of the materials?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because here it's used as a tabletop to a stainless steel kitchen.
Yes.
Very hardcore.
And with the other colors on top of it, it also kind of looks like a birthday cake.
Yeah, true. The material has kind of like small dots of red and blue in it.
Yeah.
So now you've seen the color that I would like you to interpret musically. How do you think you'll do that?
I'm not sure, but I'm excited about it, as pink is probably my favorite color.
Is it?
Definitely one of them, yes.
Amazing.
And maybe not this exact shade, but I like it all. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I'll go for something. I'm going to think of the things I already said to you, like this safety feeling. It's very gentle and organic, but I like very much how it pops over something darker. So I might kind of create something more bland and lifeless or dark, and then put something on top that's very different. The way this pink is being used in their design.
So like you're actually going to try to interpret the pink sound also in how they created, like when they put it up against something, other materials, like the juxtaposition of that.
Exactly, yeah. I think I want to showcase the power something can have to really change how this foundation can feel, look in their case, or sound in the musical sense. How it can change when you add something very different on top of it.
Oh wow, that's interesting. And what could you say, is there like a specific instrument that you kind of have a focus on, or are you like multi-instrumentalist?
I'm definitely a multi-instrumentalist, kind of master of none. But I think no, definitely not. But I think in this case, I really like using electronic music production and synthesizers. So where I am at right now in musical life is I think I'll definitely reach for a synthesizer, maybe create like a drone or something to create a foundation.
What's a drone?
Like a very long sustaining note.
Ah, okay.
Very simple, but it can create a vibe. But I'm also kind of mainly a drummer, actually. So being my favorite color, maybe I got to throw in my favorite instrument somehow.
True. You have to combine those two favorites.
Yes, it'll be a puzzle.
It'll be a puzzle.
Sure.
Okay. And I want to ask you before I leave you to this experiment. How do you initially work in your creative process when you have to create a piece of music?
Oh, it really varies. I'm not someone who has a really good, process that I turn to every time. It's different for everything. It's a bit crazy, but I think I can break it up into there'll be an initial creative, playful phase where I want to just experiment and try a bunch of stuff out and improvise and not focus too much on any small details or what it's going to be in the end. Just create a bunch of assets, puzzle pieces to play with. And then I want to separate that from a crafting phase where I sit down without expecting to have a lot of fun and get creative in that way and look at it all and kind of trim it down, groom it, and find some little, hopefully gems or golden nuggets that I can use as new foundations to put something together.
Well, I think I will leave you to it. It sounds very good. And then I'll look forward to talk to you again and hear your version of this pink.
Thank you so much. I look forward to playing around with it.
Yeah, great. While we let Andy enjoy the process of creating the sound of pink, like a sweet Italian panna cotta, I will get back to Emanuele and Alessandro at the Stamuli studio. We will talk about another recurring element in the sound of color. We're going to talk about a project that Stamuli has created where colors play a very important role. And Emanuele and Alessandro have chosen a retail design project that they have done for the Danish fashion brand Ganni.
So first of all, Ganni was one of the first big client we got. And at the time we had a tight relationship with the owners, Dita and Nikolai, and they wanted to create a store which would recall a Scandinavian domestic environment. So our take on this was to work with the theatrical floating wall to define a room. So what's a room, right? Generally it's 4 walls, a ceiling and a floor. So we kind of fragmented all those elements and tried to strip it as much as possible and to have indeed those floating wall and those cuts in the wall which would allow you to see what was happening next. And so talking about forms and shapes, quite straight, clean lines. I hate the word minimalistic, but it was rationalistic, let's say, in how it was lay out. And the idea is that, they were launching this wall hashtag Ganni Girls. So there was a wall juvenile and a remarkable feminine approach to everything. Maybe the word girly, it's a bit too strong, but it has something that needed to be that.
Yeah. The essence of the Ganni girl, kind of.
Yes. And so this was before a lot of other Danish brands went into this pastel color. This was really one of the first, and we decided to go with pastel color. Light pink, light blue, and light yellow. So simple, clashing. Then after we started to go into shades of pink, so dark, light, very light. But at the beginning it was clashing colors. Wooden floor and tiles. And I have to say, the showroom, which is one of my favorite, one of the first projects you worked on, it was not really a store, it was more a lifestyle thing. They were supposed to do also art thing, but that is in Bremenholm, on the ground floor, facing Nikolai-Platz, behind the store. And that is a beautiful way of using colors without necessarily in this theatrical floating wall thing.
Yeah, that was a very specific space that was supposed to be a showroom and a kitchen. It's an open space divided into there is a showroom and the kitchen area, and we focus on the kitchen area to play with tiles. So it's a completely tiled floor and walls. So to have this effect of a sort of a super studio kind of look, like an infinite wall, in a beige tone, so very toned down, nice, with grouting in light blue, contrasting grouting, so that the check, the square, the shape pop out very clearly. And that's when we started playing around with colors as a material to build actually the objects. that was fun because in this setup, with tiles everywhere, it's very easy to see, volumes and objects as drawings, kind of. In the sense that when you have like a color block in that space, you feel and you look from abroad, it looks like a geometrical drawings, kind of.
Because of all the lines of the ground and the tiles.
Exactly. It looks like paper, where you sketch objects. And that was also one of the moments in which we started thinking about the Tagada collection. So
True.
there is like a connection in between Ganni and the concept developed for Ganni, and then the objects we thought it was like representative of what was our journey at the time.
Tagada, as Emanuele and Alessandro mentioned, was their big breakthrough as a studio. I would describe them as almost cubist furniture. Chairs, tables, sofas, mirrors in a mix of strong colored surfaces, which stand in great contrast to each other. The chair, perhaps the most famous in the series, is in its form quite simple. 4 legs, a seat and a back. But the juxtaposition of the colored surfaces is what catches the eye. The bold color choices and the contrast between the colors creates a new spatial experience, which is completely unique. And I can't help but think how they actually transfer this way of using color in other projects. For example, with a brand that already has a very set color scale.
Maybe a big difference from other studios is that we always kind of prioritize the needs of the clients and the brands, because we're very strong in the identity they carry. And it's not just, our inputs, but of course we have our inputs. So it is like, the outcome is always different, right? So the first thing we ask ourselves is, do we need a color here or not? Should be like warm, cold, and we try it out. We try out because it's always in relationship with the aesthetic and the architecture. It's not like we don't start from the color alone. We it's part of the it's also a kind of it's part of a palette we use. So it's together with other materials. So when you decide to use wood, like a warm material, or a cold one, a brutal one, or maybe a gentle one, with the colors is the same, and you mix it and they play together, maybe nicely, maybe not. Want to clash sometimes, or maybe not. And it depends on what you want to tell and how do you want to drive, let's say, the journey. Let's say in a store or in a...
And when you say drive a journey, you mean like how you lead the customers around in the shop?
Yeah, at least as we imagine doing it, because every time is different. But it's definitely the flow inside a store, and the retail experience, as it's called, and we call it, it's a thing, and it's a way of also understanding the journey that a customer, client will do in the space. So it's part of you put yourself in the shoes of this customer approaching a store. So you start from the facade, you get in, what kind of feelings you want to experience, and where you want to focus, and go and discover, in this journey, let's say. So the colors is a big part, in the sense that you can, it's like lights, right? It's very association. Yeah, we can associate it with lights a lot.
Yeah, it was you kind of got in on this in the beginning, that you reference colors as light.
Yeah, it is. It is, from a scientific point of view, it's probably exactly the explanation of what color are. I guess.
Yeah, it is. I would say so.
But of course, everyone perceives it in a different way. But they also carry some kind of qualities that are objective sometimes, and definitely they will help. It's like in a graphic design, no? When you have like a capital letter, then you see it first. If something is bigger, you see it first, right? It's louder. With colors, it's the same. Maybe you have like a toned down space, and then you have an accent, even if it's not as big, you're gonna immediately notice that, because maybe you have like a red shelving, and the eyes is always is immediately attracted from that, because you want to, the person visiting the customer, or whatever, like the user of the space, or how can I say?
No, the customers, I would say, customers, the people who come into the shop.
yeah, exactly. Whoever enter the space to focus on that first, and then reading the rest. Yeah.
So it's almost like a little leading light. You kind of want to like drag
to create a little journey. I mean, that's what you do also to follow a narrative in the designing of the space. Definitely, yeah.
I quite like the description and the idea, and I think for people maybe who are designers, maybe not architects, but there's the idea that you're describing, that you're using color as light in an architectural sense to create a space where you can lead people into a space, or like to the side or around, or like like making these small like spots of lights, or color.
Especially in interiors, because when you can work on architectures properly, then you can play with windows, openings, like arcades, or whatever you want to have lights entering the space actually. But if you have like a defined space that is usually like a big space inside a building, and you can't really play with natural light so much.
No, you can't put a window in a shopping center or like a big shop.
You can't really change the facade, or very rarely, let's say. So colors is definitely like a way to use lights in the space.
It is really eye-opening for me to hear how an architect doesn't have the option to work with light in a shop, because all other windows and doors are often blinded, and how Stamuli actually control the whole spatial shop experience by using colors and colorful elements as spots of light to guide the customers around in the space. It's really something that Stamuli is very good at. But to me, there's a big difference between projects like the Tagada chair and a Ganni store, and I would very much like to hear how they experience the difference between these two creative processes.
Well, nowadays we get called a lot, even by companies, because we are considered good with colors. So now we are much more free than before. However, as we said before, we often have a clear guidelines depending on the typology of company. I would say high fashion, they have more clear idea on which are the chromatics that you have to include. Less high level or more mass products. I would say when we do things just by ourselves, it's we tend to work a lot with the colors we started the interview on. I think that light pink and light yellow,
it's like personal preferences.
In my last few years of my career has been two very important colors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and we actually explored also the absence of colors in this last year.
Yeah, it's true.
So because we tried to detach somehow from, let's try without any color, and we did.
Yeah.
And how did that feel?
Weird.
We're working on. It.
Okay.
Maybe absence of color is more like very subtle, and maybe color that is not. It's reflected or is.
But it's not explicit.
Yeah, it's not explicit. Yeah.
Yeah, not like here it is. Like like the laminate, exactly. It's like explicit.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the color.
Yeah.
Where with stuff you've done now, you've been working on is like a much more like
materials or some sort of metals. Yeah, so that you take the colors from the surrounding or maybe black and white.
Yeah, but also, if you do product, you need to take this decision because it's a product. It goes, it's an object, and you need to give it. But if you do a space, a space is whatever it is. A house is in the nature. If it's a room, you have people inside. If it's a bathroom, you have the reflection from the window. I don't know, whatever. But then if you play with the things that reflects or that filters the reality, such as certain kind of glasses, like that glass, for example, on my shield, then all of a sudden you have a reinterpretation of the reality. You don't have to add any color. No. They just do the game.
Yeah. I think that's a quite interesting, also a good spot to maybe wrap up some of this. Like there was, the fact that you're like saying, like when you do a product, you really have to think about the color because it exists in itself. Whereas when you do a space, like the material that can reflect everything that goes on in the space and all the colors that comes into the space.
Yeah.
So it might not, you might not need to be so explicit in the color in a spatial sense.
No, absolutely. I mean, we will never be John Paulson's kind of style. That's not us, absolutely, but I understand that kind of architecture. You know, because it's an architecture that takes a lot from the surrounding, and in a way, in our world, we also try sometimes to be the filter between the nature and the human eye. Sometimes you don't need to add anything. You just need to be the filter in the right way with the right angle. But it's very difficult to do that. I feel also that we're aging in our profession and we're getting more sophisticated.
As the attentive listener has probably noticed, there's a larger birthday party lined up out in the rest of the office space. But before I can let go of Emanuele and Alessandro, I have one last question for them. Because Emanuele said that they have become more sophisticated in their work over time. As I often meet this preconceived idea that if something is very colorful, then it's not sophisticated. I am wondering what they think about that.
No, I don't think so. I don't know what you think.
I think it's a very easy way to put it. It's very easy to put it in a more elevated and sophisticated, like aura, kind of, because the minimalism is associated with that, kind of. But I think it's also, I mean, it's not easy. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's way harder to place like colors in a minimalistic environment. So then that's the goal, probably. Of course, like, you know, pop colors and, you know, clashing colors is very explicit and can be perceived as
indeed
loud and but also it is like a loud voice, right? So nobody can say it's not. But there are many ways and many nuances to consider, I think.
And sophisticated is also negative acception. If you look at the etymology of the word. So when I say that we're aging, is just that and we're getting more sophisticated. It's just that sometimes you want to beat around the bush. You don't want to say it straight. You know, when you're a teenager and you have to express your emotion to your first girlfriend, you just go with black and white. You don't really know how to express yourself. So it's all either great or super bad. And then you start to age and you know that maybe you should filter a little the things you said, right?
What? Oh, so nobody told me.
No, but you know, especially work. And I think that professionally it happens a bit the same. Sometimes to reach a certain message, you want to take a deviation that makes it feel a little bit more poetic, that there is a longer journey to reach that point. I don't know, maybe it's just, I don't know if it's even correct, but sometimes I feel it's a bit like that. It's still an emotional journey. And you want that to last as long as possible.
Yeah, that's a nice answer.
Thank you very much. We managed to do it.
We managed to do it, exactly.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. So I think this is going to be good. We're going to see how it goes with the sound of pink. That's going to be the finishing note.
My God, I'm so curious about it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so now it's time for cake and bubbles for Emanuele and Alessandro. Thank you to them for this colorful conversation. But luckily, dear listener, you and I also have a dessert to finish off. The panna cotta with strawberry. Let's hear what our musician Andy Weisman has gotten out of the light pink color. Hi Andy, I'm back.
Hi, good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, you have been working on interpreting the color pink as a piece of music. And I'm very excited to hear the musical take that you have come up with. Do you want to take us through your process?
Sure. Like I think I mentioned before, I wanted to create some sort of foundation just to work off of. Sometimes it's easier to just work if you have something, whether you delete it in the end or not. So I used a synthesizer there, an old Roland Juno 106.
I like that specific information for the listeners.
Excellent, yeah, you'll find your synth nerds.
I've met some of them, they're great.
Oh, awesome. Of course, they all are. Yeah. But yeah, so I made like a very simple kind of dark sounding drone that kind of can sound dark or happy or light depending on what is added on top of it. So I just made a really kind of chill, dark, but not too crazy low, kind of dusty and airy drone note that I liked the feeling of in that moment. Then I looped it and I said, I'm going to play drums now. So I had that in my ears and I just kind of improvised to a click track, like a metronome, on the drums for a while. And some ideas kind of came together, like, yes, this is the groove that's happening right now for whatever reason. So I just recorded myself for probably like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then I listened to that and found some fun moments that I liked and created like a couple of loops that could be cool beats. to build something else on top of, or that I thought felt cool on top of the drone.
Yeah.
And then I processed the heck out of those drums and made them sound entirely different. But yeah, I did a lot of processing and experimenting and just like, completely reconfiguring this loop and sound until something just felt like, that's the inspiration I have in the moment. And then I started adding some other musical elements on top of it, different textures, different colors, kind of like the picture you showed me where there's this pink, there's this airy stuff on top of this metallic, darker surfaces, adding brightness and life to the space. But then there's also the other colors, kind of
the small
sprinkles.
The sprinkles, the dots in the plastic material.
Yeah, exactly. So I've got a couple different instruments in the track that are kind of creating different textures, different layers to it that I guess provide the sprinkles.
That sounds good. I like that. Well, I'm thinking actually that we should just ask the listeners to put their headphones on, turn up the volume, and get comfortable, and then they should close their eyes out there. Because here comes the sound of pink. Thank you very much for listening. As always, I really, really appreciate it. If you like what you heard, please share it with someone that you think will like it too. Even it being your grandma, your friend, your mom, your brother, your sister. Just send them a little note to listen to this podcast. Or you can also go and give the podcast a review. I know that it really helps others to find it as well. Something about those algorithms. As always, it means a lot to me if you help me spread the word. And if you want to see more about the work of Stamuli, check out my website, sarahgottlieb.dk, under the podcast section. This episode was sponsored by Montana Furniture.